the Provost umbrella, which academic health does, but some units have a team. A lot of units don't have a web team. So we're here to help anyone that falls under that umbrella. CFANS is also under our umbrella, but they have a good team, and so they don't necessarily need our help. We service right now, I think, at least 60 different unique sites. So that range from undergrad education, graduate school, faculty affairs. I'm trying to think of some like Cura. We have some pretty substantial departments. So it's just kind of the three of us managing all of that.
I'm Brent Engebretson. I'm the web administrator for the Academic Health Center. That's my boss. I've been here at the university for 16 years now and been involved with the web for the last 14. Migration into Drupal was my 5th content management system migration. Our previous one, we had a high point of 275 sites into it, and when we started the Drupal migration, we started off with 165, and we just got through with our 2-year project of redoing them, and we got that number down to 75, a much more manageable level. My role is, I'm really kind of that first point of contact when people go, help! And I spend a lot of my time just troubleshooting all of the different things that could go wrong in Drupal. And if I can't fix it, I'm kind of the jack of all trades. If I can't fix it, then I kind of get other folks involved in that thing. And I've also kind of served as just kind of that main interface between the needs of Rebecca and the other members of our team, and kind of to manage that relationship with OIT and that. So. Yeah, I do a little bit of everything.
I'm Rachel Lynn. I'm with the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences, and I'm the main web person. I have one other person who helps me with some of the less technical Drupal things. And we just finished a 2-year project to move more than 90 sites out of US content into Drupal, which was a lot of fun, going into that with no Drupal experience whatsoever. And now we're migrating our more freestanding sites, Dreamweaver and WordPress sites in Drupal. That first project's done.
Point out too that Rachel and Brent and I are also on the Drupal advisory board for the university's, it's not governance precisely, but we advise about how Drupal is used at the university.
Yeah, it's very quickly, because it's a shared enterprise platform that's managed centrally by OIT, they're responsible for maintaining and make sure that the modules are all up to date and working with one another if there's any problems. But as units, to do anything that we want to kind of within that particular box. And so when somebody asks for some special functionality, they run it through the advisory board as kind of a governance thing. Do we want to take on the maintenance? Do we want to take that on, that extra workload on to maintain that extra module? And so it's a yay or nay kind of thing.
Great. So why did you all want to come to the session? What are you hoping to get out of it? What are you hoping to take away? Any ahas you're hoping to have? Any stories or insights in particular? Yeah.
I'd like to hear the story of how you came to choose Drupal and kind of a high-level narrative of where you started and why and where you wound up.
Great.
Go for it.
Should we tell them the dirt?
Let's get a few ideas and then kind of
Well, my coworker and I work for Ramsey County, and we have just gone live with a new Drupal site that was created by Clockwork. And the idea is over the next few months, they're going to be having less and less to do with it, and it's going to become our responsibility. And so I'm looking for, what things to watch for, and how to get help, and things of that nature.
Great.
As a follow-on to Todd's request, sort of not only how you arrived at Drupal, but sort of what your reality was based on your initial expectations,
right.
Sort of what you thought you were getting versus how it ended up, and what your thoughts are on how it all worked out.
Great.
I work for the law library in this building. So I'm interested, what are the libraries just another customer, or what are their special problems?
Libraries are kind of their own
They're a little bit
separate deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Libraries are not in the enterprise.
Yeah.
They ran Drupal before it actually became standardized.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm
Any
at the
other?
University of Wisconsin Stout, and
Yeah.
we're just embarking on a redesign and a migration to Drupal, and so I'm interested in what really worked for you. What were some things that helped you be successful in the migration? What were some keys to your success?
And what didn't?
Yeah.
Everyone did, right?
Good calls.
Do it again, what would we skip over? Great. Great, others that kind of hit on what people want to hear about, are we missing anything?
I just wanted to hear about those lessons that you learned from your experiences, and also I've been doing work for most of you or all of you for over a year. Just wanted to see if I would look like I introduce myself. My coworker Sandy works with T2 VCSH, so we do a lot of work for you guys.
Where your Drupal go to? Some of you know Vanessa.
Yep.
Joe, Sandy.
We wouldn't be able to do anything
Without you guys, yeah.
Good for that.
You load my refunds.
I'd be interested in hearing about your staff training program, or how you went about like
Getting
your
everyone up to-
recruiting process to get people with Drupal knowledge.
Yeah. That's good. Cool. Great. Great. Well, I think this gives, there's sort of a real narrative to be told here. We'll get through some of that, hit on some of these points, and definitely if you have any questions as we're talking or want to tell me more about that as we're saying something, just jump in and we'll make a noise if we don't spot you. This room's a little off, but just try and we'll just keep the conversation going that way. So, well, I don't know how way back we want to go on the narrative of where we got started. We were, the U, we could kind of maybe just pass it back and forth here. The U was in a system called Content for, it just just shut down, and it was sort of in the mix for like 10 years.
It was Oracle, we have a habit of naming these things. It was actually Oracle UCM, Universal Content Management. It was a document management system at the time, and they had a bolt-on module that you could make web content out of it. There was a long RFP process involved with it, and it was a good idea at the time. And open source was still relatively new, and I remember discussions, some people were passionate about doing that. And frankly, open source was not an option because we needed to have somebody help us do it. There was no Origin 8s or any of that infrastructure out there to help a university this size build a system to service. So we ended up going with a proprietary deal. But
There was one thing that was happening at the time, which was there was a beginning of a Drupal community. And that was the one thing that I mentioned this yesterday in talks with other folks. The one thing that we never had with the Oracle system was a Oracle user group, the Oracle
Camp.
There was no such thing. And that, the contrast between those two things is kind of stark. It's just like, if you were going to be doing development, you had to have a developer who knew the system. You had to hire a company, and there weren't that many of them that were doing it. And so that was a huge difference.
your support system was a single book
Right.
that was written by a developer who had left the company Stellan at the time that
Yeah.
Oracle had bought. And he wrote a massive book about everything that he knew about that, and that was your support.
I have that.
Yeah, so basically, this is, what the U had, and there were kind of a group of us at the U who were kind of saying, okay, we know that this is probably not going to be lasting that much longer. What's next? And we started researching options, looking at WordPress or Drupal, and we were really pretty open at that point to what direction to go. There was no, it's going to be Drupal. That was really part of just the exploration process, and knew we wanted open source. So that was really the main kind, the narrowing of options. And so did just a lot of interviews with people, did a lot of information gathering on campus. There were groups on campus, the libraries, Minnesota Population Center. There were groups who were using Drupal already, just they'd done it on their own and they weren't part of the central university system. And so we talked to various, companies that help people convert to Drupal and just did a lot of research, conversations, and got in the Central Information Technology Group, then also got involved with that process.
Because they came back and, I sat in on a couple sales presentations for a couple more proprietary content management systems. And that isn't the direction that I don't think that any of us really wanted to go. So a lot of the move to Drupal kind of grew organically from within the departments themselves. And we really brought OIT along for the ride, invited them to come to those meetings, and I think they started to see, the benefits and possibilities. So it was all good.
I have to say, I wasn't that enthused at the time. I wasn't. I mean, it was like,
I know.
It was. I mean, I knew the libraries had used it. I was okay with what we had, although it really didn't work that well. It does document management really well.
It does.
And it had good workflow. That was about it. But it was one of those things where, I don't know Drupal. And actually that was 2013. I was looking back at my calendar. It was 2013. And that was the first Drupal camp I came to in that June. And that was where I was kind of like, this maybe isn't such a bad idea at that point. I mean, and it was literally, that was like one of the first times I had actually gotten involved. I was doing a build a module thing and made a website, and I was like, wow, okay, I guess I could do that.
Yeah, so there was just really some traction with it, kind of starting out in the community, but with them, the central IT group, convincing their leadership to get on board, and then it really became clear, okay, this is going to be the direction. Now what do we do to make this work at an enterprise level at a university? And so there, they actually consulted with a company, phase 2, or
we did phase 2, did a discovery
phase to how would you implement create like a just kind of a recommendation, because no one knew kind of where to get started with it all. What does this look like? It's open source, but we want to have some, if it's going to be centrally managed, just how does that all take shape? What does that look like? And so those recommendations were made to create an enterprise.
It helped inform us when we finally did the RFP to actually, okay, this is what we're requesting to build.
Right.
The universities, we still use RFPs, and it's getting harder and harder to do that in this kind of tech world, but it's the rules that we have to kind of live under. So,
right.
But we use that to help inform. That was and that led to work with Palantir, and we linked Palantir up, and we also requested a hosting provider at the same time.
I remember exactly how that all went, but ended up we hosted Acquia and used them as the primary hosting system.
Yeah, at around about the same time, OIT was wanting to get into more cloud-based storage, and there was just a real appetite to be able to host that stuff off-site.
We had hosted the earlier content management structure. The entire thing was done in-house, and that it worked okay, but I think there was a lot of stresses on the central administration and the folks in OIT to actually make that work the way everybody wanted it to, because scaling something like that as it needed to be scaled, I think, was problematic for them. So centralized hosting was something we wanted to do for a long time, at least in my unit.
So then there were kind of a whole set of different requirements or things that the U platform would have, and so that basically that was built and then kind of released, but then there was this kind of gap of learning.
Now we have this platform, now what?
So for pilot test site users, there was no training available. And so it was kind of, here you go, figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. In our particular unit, we were fortunate to have our developer on staff came from a single Drupal developer shop. It was him, and I think he had the other partner he was with kind of, did all the sales stuff, but his partner had moved on to do some other things. He ended up coming to Vue, and unfortunately, this was all before all of this stuff went down. He had all of this Drupal background, and we were able to, we got lucky, and he actually helped out with some of the initial theming stuff that became part of the base theme for the university. But he struggled because he used Drupal in a specific way. He was using blocks. We're using Monopoly, Panelizer, all of that stuff. He had a hard time getting his head wrapped around some of this stuff, and so there was quite a bit of time spent just trying to get it all figured out. And then, a few aha moments here and there, and it just started kind of coming together. And then we just kind of figured things out along the way.
Right, so we had, in the interim of things getting set up on the U platform, created several Drupal sites on using Pantheon for hosting to just be able to get going, to start creating a theme. Because we're, the way our group works with, we work with, there's 6 different colleges and schools, hundreds of centers, many different units, and people, we're needing to kind of start the ball rolling, so we weren't like, so this doesn't take 5 years to get done. So, but it basically was a 5-year project crammed into 2 years. But there was definitely this period of like everyone figuring things out across the U in terms of how they were implementing within their units. Because the university platform, there's a base theme, but then to layer your own sub-theme on top of that, and your own kind of look and feel in particular area, things that because every sort of college or major area of the U wants some kind of distinction or do things their own way and autonomy, and that's our culture, right? So
yeah, and the different groups got together and we would talk about everything that we were doing, what we were trying over here, and what they were trying over here. There's some of that stuff happening formally. OIT was kind of the connecting point on all of this stuff, so we could go back to OIT and say we're having trouble doing this, and they could say, well, we've been helping CCE out with this stuff, and we could help apply that to your situation, and there's just a lot of that kind of that connecting talk. It was also helpful that a question that comes up and being part of this greater Drupal community, Google. You just type in, I'm having trouble with this, and somehow the answer gets provided back to you. No longer do we have a 500-page book. Do that. We have a whole World Wide Web of information out there.
I don't even have a Drupal book.
Yeah.
I don't actually own one. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened was a lot of units were looking to have developers, and they didn't really know who, and there were a lot of different developers out there, different companies that were interested. And to help pull that along, OIT actually vetted a series of vendors. They had half a dozen or so of them that were kind of pre-approved, preferred. Yeah, I mean, they're mostly it was that they had been. They kind of talked them a little bit through what the situation was at the University of Minnesota and gave individual colleges and other units an easier way to hire somebody without having to go through a formal RFP anymore for each of those. I think it was up to $50,000 or something like that, some specific dollar amount of development. And that I think helped a lot of units. In our college, we actually didn't use an outside developer. We had, not in Drupal, but in other projects, we've been burned by outside developers, unfortunately. Just not had good experiences. So we decided, let's build in-house. We had enough people who knew a little bit about how to get this thing done, and I learned a lot. Doing, let's see, lynda.com, lots of stuff with that. Build a module. That was extremely helpful. And then, as Brent said, just a lot of other outside information through the web. There's immense amounts of things that you can find that way. And then a couple other things that OIT offered. They do, it's about every month or two, there's an open lab for people to come in and ask questions, and you have to sign up for it. That way they know if anybody's actually going to be there for that open lab. But there's usually 6 or 8 or 10 people who show up, and there'll be several developers, others, people who are there, extremely helpful, because you can come in with a particular problem and get it solved, or at least get traction in the problem directly. It's a little bit like what I remember when I was in college and I would go to a computer lab. You know, had this experience, and you're typing away at a problem, and you turn around and go, "Hey, anybody seen this problem before?" And that's exactly what that situation in those lab sessions were, and that was very helpful to me. That really fit in the style of how I learned stuff, and that was very good. And we've been continuing that learning process as we go. We're currently using a couple developers within OIT to do some of the projects that we're doing, but they're more internal to the university projects, hooking into databases that exist within the university, into systems that exist within the university. We use a non-credit registration system called Destiny 1, and what we've been working on with that is pulling in course data and creating nodes every day that update continuously. So we pull in course data, section data, and fees data about all of those things. And then we use that when we're creating views of those non-credit courses within our system. We pull in, depends on the time of year, 200 to 600 courses, something like that. So a lot of those come in. We're still in the process right now of working on the PeopleSoft data. We're trying to get PeopleSoft data to do the same kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Any of you know something about what I'm talking about with PeopleSoft? We're not quite sure if that's actually going to be the case, but what we're trying to do is exactly that, which is pull course data in so that we're not necessarily sending people off to a different system. We can keep them within our system and get good tracking data and also preserve the user experience that they have within the system. Yeah.
Talk to me about that later.
Okay, I will.
We were able to hook up with OIT with one of their contract workers who was just excellent, and we were able to take the entire university template and basically gut it and put our own bootstrap so that we don't have to deal with panels and regions and variants and all the things that end up causing caching problems. And so we have a pretty sweet template that is kind of fills that gap between what Drupal has now, what we have now for Drupal Lite and the big template. So we kind of have this nice intermediate bootstrap template that we're using that makes it a lot easier and gives a lot more control over the content managers and smaller units to create their own layouts and own designs within the page. And then you don't have to worry about site or pages going rogue. You don't have to worry about everything is sort of contained or making new content types or so it's really so if you're able to go the bootstrap way, it seems to be a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah. You mentioned Drupal Lite. Drupal Lite is essentially, it's kind of a light version of our enterprise Drupal, but it's based off of Acquia service called Site Factory, and it's just
it's a cookie cutter.
It's a cookie cutter thing, baseline of stuff, but we set it up so it can service student groups, faculty, pages where they can show off their work. You know, when you have a grant proposal, and good golly, I get calls 5 o'clock and it has to be in fax to Washington, D.C. at 5:30, and they want you to get a URL and a site spun up before they submit it.
You can.
You can. And so at least you get a baseline web presence, and it's designed that even a brain surgeon can go in and build their own web page.
No offense, I'm a PhD.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were taking us.
I was a PhD candidate, so I can talk about that.
Yeah.
You guys all keep your sites public on the U of M GitHub, all the source code, like you were talking about the bootstrap template.
Yeah.
You keep it all out on public.
Ours though
inside the U
is
public.
kind of,
Inside
it
the-
resides, yeah, kind of within, it's kind of within that area. So when you create a site, you know, you take from the base theme and then you create a sub-theme in the default folder. Ours resides within the all folder, so the structure is a little bit different because we're kind of on the same level as the U of M base. But yes, all of ours are public.
Yeah, within the U.
Within the
yeah,
university.
ours is.
Mhm.
Although if you're gonna end up using it, we'd like to know.
Yeah, yeah.
So what were some of the, that worked really well, you know, people want to hear what's something you would do it that way again, it worked well, and if you knew it faster, that would have been good.
Well, for us, we decided that we wanted to really limit the look and feel of our 90-plus sites, because most of them, we wanted the departments to have consistency, because they'd kind of been going rogue for a few years. And after the first site or two, we realized we were having to enter in our custom content types over and over again, and we ended up creating a clone site, which was just our very base site. And then we'd have the used Drupal team duplicate that with each new one that we created, and that saved us a ton of work.
And we copied that process for
So
ours.
if you're creating a whole bunch of similar sites, that's a really easy way to do it. So we really liked that. We also took this as an opportunity to go through and review every bit of our content. And so you don't need 9-year-old newsletters, but also to really look at, you know, what information is out there and how can we reuse it, because so many people were just, you know, this is a page. This is our page of content. And we went back and we said, okay, well, you know, for faculty, what bits of information are there? How might we want to repurpose those in other places? And so it took a real new mindset of thinking of information in chunks rather than as a solid entity. But that's really been good because now we have, you know, we have a faculty page, a profile page, but then it automatically updates the table of all the faculty listings on this other section of the site. And, you know, somewhere else they're pulling in a list of all the faculty who do research on fish. And that's pulling from that same information, and it's saving us a ton of time in updates and getting rid of a lot of inaccurate information, because, you know, the admin staff who update that would forget, like, oh, right, there's this subpage that lists these things and so left, and nobody thought to change that. So it's really helping us keep things much more up to date.
Is that talking to PeopleSoft or?
No, that is not talking to PeopleSoft. That is all within Drupal. But it's not necessarily the stuff that would be in PeopleSoft. It's more, you know, faculty listing their publications and their personal description, paragraph, and that sort of thing.
Is that data entered by the individual faculty members?
Generally, we have them submit it to their department's admin, who enters it, or we have student workers who help with a lot of the initial setup. We don't give individual faculty members access to the department sites in general, just because most of them don't want that, and it's easier to control just 1 or 2 people having access to the site. If they do want their own lab site, then we're putting them into Drupal Lite now. For the most part, we have been giving them WordPress, but we want to get out of hosting our own WordPress sites. And for the people who've moved into either Drupal or Drupal Lite, they've been really happy with how easy it is to use.
Our unit is quite a bit different because our sites, none of them will ever look the same. They will all be completely, so how do you manage and help people with that many different unique features, looks, you know, how do we keep them updated? So that's how we came up with a system where we have, you know, the admin section, we have sites that are, we call it in the fold, that kind of all look the same. And then we have sites that are kind of out of the fold that people have their own web teams to manage. They kind of do their own thing, but we still have a central location where we can update modules, we can update features. If we see that a certain feature is reoccurring and needs to be brought into the fold where it needs to be on the admin side, then we just transfer it over. so that all the sites will benefit from any update. And it's turned out to be a really nice feature to manage.
How do you manage the support for those if you have all of these websites and entropy eventually is just going to make it seems like it would make it really hard to support? How do you know that a module update isn't going to break down
We
your-
try to have made everything built core within our template, so that it just makes it a lot easier to manage. So the three of us can update, and then if something big comes along, then it's still on the university enterprise system, and we can call John Starr or Jim Hart and say, this is happening. What do I need to have this? But we try to keep everything true to like the Drupal modules. We try not to hack into them in any way, so that when updates occur, that everything will go smoothly. That's one of the biggest features, is not to hack into those modules and make them custom.
But when those roll out, I'm wondering more, how do you test? Do you just have people report randomly, or do you have a system?
We actually, most of them will go with our programmer, or we test them. It runs the program where it just sends dummy information and then throws us back any conflicts. So usually with modules it's kind of very much like how OIT tests their modules.
Which is how? What system? Is it a custom thing?
Yeah, it's a custom, just kind of builds a site and for several hundred pages with kind of any dummy content. So far our protocol is if it kind of throws out a few errors, we just disregard using the module or choose if we need to modify it. So.
The U is also running a three server level, so there's a dev, a stage, and a prod. And so on a global scale, they push updates to the dev and say, hey, we've done this, tell us if there are any problems. And then we have 2 weeks to give them feedback. And then if everything has been worked out, then they'll push it to the next.
Sometimes we get complacent because things go along so well, the dev stuff, you get the email and it's this seems like a minor update, and then it goes into production, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And then, then you end up kicking around. No.
That hasn't happened, actually.
No,
there was one or two, but those are small. There were smaller issues with some of those.
And there were more obscure problems for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big, complicated system, but from my perspective, it's been working astonishingly well. I mean, there's a lot of layers to the development process. And, I think OIT's been doing a pretty good job of keeping it.
I think OIT, we have a great support system.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough about how you really have to have a community in order to build Drupal. You can't ever think you can just go at it alone, because it's just too big.
But this is part of that process. If you get a chance to at some point, this is actually fairly useful. This is a site that they built. Solution selection guide, web development self-help guide, just to give you an idea what these. I'm not authorized. What are they not authorized? Which one are we doing?
The enterprise Drupal?
Yeah, enterprise Drupal self-help guide. That's the one. Okay, so we've got a self-help guide, and it's it's a series of what is Drupal, and it'll run you through a series of steps, just following along on that self-help guide. There's a bunch of these, and those have been. It's a very useful way of getting everything up and running. The other thing that they've been offering is a lot of training, and including customized training. We had training that was actually partially done by the trainers in OIT, and we said, and we'd like, because for our site, we needed different sorts of things. This is what we do. For instance, workflow. We have workflow. We have everything in our site that runs through an editor. So that's one way that we do to control. That's how we control the rogue elements of a website, is that we actually have a couple of very good editors to go through everything. So.
we have hundreds of contributors at the HC, and we have monthly trainings, and because, you know, the HC kind of has its own take on Drupal and the platform, you know, we ask for kind of a specialized training where I think the OIT trainers kind of teach the basics, and then some of our folks, you know, get up there and then talk about the, you know, HC styles and when it's appropriate to do some of this stuff, and some of the features that we have kind of embedded in that. And just going back to the credit, I think the reason why things are move remarkably well is because I think most folks are respectful of, I think, the core platform stuff, and it's a pretty high, or at least for us, it's a pretty high bar if we want some custom functionality, because we end up having to take that on ourselves, and we try to do everything that we can to kind of stick within that framework, because we just don't want to take on that extra complexity. We'd rather just let OIT kind of handle that stuff. We want to just be able to concentrate on putting up content and you know, delete content, although that rarely happens, it seems like, in a university environment. But we just want to kind of, we just want to, I know, we just want to turn around and take care of that stuff. I say I know because we were moving stuff in our migration that I know that I saw, you know, 14, 15 years ago. That it's just like, why am I moving this again for the 15th time or 5th time? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. So I just pulled, it was, I think one sort of positive from the start was the training. The people in the Office of Information Technology the trainers were part of the whole process with these contractors who were who were brought in, and so they were getting even to know the system as it was being developed, and so they were able to hit the ground running with both a developer training and a contributor training, you know, pretty early on when things were released, which was really important for people to be able to get going with things, and then having these open labs. For our group, like Brent was saying, there are so many, you know, hundreds of contributors, and we were launching sites over the period of several years. We ended up partnering with OIT on our own training, where, you know, we team teach, and then we go off this training site that's specifically developed with our theme, and so our sites, our 75 sites, are basically have this look and feel with some different ways of customizing. We used the clone approach. That was also one of the biggest positives, and kind of a workflow that we developed as we were doing sites was sort of getting all the updates we wanted to make sort of under the model of continuously improving. We would learn thing from one to the next and getting all the newest changes into the clone so that the next sites would be better. And so
sites,
so we always keep the training site up to date. And so where we do more customization is really on things like the styles, and, you know, we'll create custom content types for groups based on specific needs that they might have. And so, like, we update all the various WYSIWYG styles and different kinds of call-outs, and so anyway, it's basically kind of an ongoing reference for this stuff. We ended up creating our most content is created with AHC content, just kind of using the panelizer. We ended up making our own layouts because the Panoply layouts were just not quite what we needed. And so anyway, there's we were able to kind of create our own world here that meets the needs. But what I like is we don't need to, you know, OIT is taking care of so there's like, the tiers are like Acquia is the hosting, which for us was a big deal with our system UM content. It had gotten incredibly slow, unbearingly slow. It was like
It would be you'd make your edits, and you'd hit the save button, and you go up and get your cup of coffee, and then you could take a couple of sips, and then it would finally go through.
Right.
And then your sites would update once a day.
Right. So those were the two issues people, you know, your site, you'd have to wait overnight for a change.
Yeah, because the system would crawl your entire site, process the changes overnight, and then spit out a finished HTML page to your web server.
So those were the big concerns, with very good reason that people had for whatever was going to be next. And so, with Drupal, okay, the changes will be made right away, you'll be able to see them. But then the other thing that was a big deal was hosting them with Acquia, that if the university needs to increase the capacity, we have more ability to do that. And when it was all managed in-house, you have to then add more staff, it's harder to make those kinds of changes. And so that's how we could mitigate that issue.
Right, if the medical school here were to somehow we discover the cure for cancer, we could call Acquia up and amp up our server capacity, because everybody's going to be coming here trying to read about that news. So there's stuff like that ends up happening right here.
So, that question.
You guys had mentioned the training site in Linda earlier. We at Carlson did kind of the full stack of development. And I would say Drupalize Me is actually the best at getting someone up to speed who's never used Drupal. If you haven't seen Drupalize Me as a training site, they have all the crazy little things that are available in our instance.
Code Karate is also good, and it's free.
Which one?
Code Karate.
I was going to mention another thing that we do in our college. We have about a dozen content contributors that are different units and sometimes multiple units that do the editing. They have what is it? They're listed as content contributors, not as editors or senior editors, so they can't actually publish. They have to put it into a needs review. And from that group, we have right now it's a quarter. We had it for a while monthly, but now it's down to quarterly meetings where we would get them together, talk about changes, ask them things that they needed, things that they were having trouble with, and then go through usually a training as well during that quarterly meeting. So we have a couple-hour meeting every 3 months, and that was very useful. We're down to quarterly now because they didn't want to keep doing it every month. They were getting enough information and feel comfortable enough with the system that it works great for them. And then as new people come on, we do additional training, usually one-on-one training. What I like about this is that I can get an editor up and running in half an hour. I can stretch it to an hour if I have to, if they've got a bunch of questions, but literally I can get someone into the system working that quickly. And that is very good.
Yeah, it's rare that we've heard complaints about moving into the system. Obviously, anything that we had before was going to be much better. But I think overall people have been extremely pleased and very. I can't think of anything. Obviously there's complaints about whatever color we're using on their sites, but it has nothing to do with it's Drupal related and functionality wise. I think everybody kind of enjoys, it was an easy sell when you could tell people that your changes would be updated right away when they hit save, as opposed to waiting overnight.
I will say though, it's good to be realistic. When we do our trainings, we try and say Drupal's, we're dealing with a lot of times people when who've been sort of thrust into this role of web content, editor person, and aren't necessarily, even sure how Microsoft Word works totally or not, and so I think there's, we just try and set the expectation. It's still like any technology, it has its quirks. The save button moves around depending where you are. There's no auto save like there is in Google, and so I think it's also good just with communication and stuff to set realistic expectations with folks. Like Drupal's not like a magic wand. That's like, I think there was this sort of high hope expectation with a lot of build up because the project was so long, right? And so you keep hearing about it. Drupal is coming, and there's the communication is an important aspect too. For that, I guess the real other part of our story was all the planning we did before we even knew that Drupal was going to be the solution. And so we have we did a lot of work at looking across our hundreds of sites and just kind of what makes sense in our web ecosystem. And so we really took a lot of work to define, one thing we took a lot of work to define was this concept of a web point person, that every web property would have one kind of go-to So the way, our team works is so Acquia is the host, then OIT, they manage a certain set of things, and then our central web team manages a certain set of things within the theme and the tools and guiding the projects. But then everyone in the units then need to then deal with a whole set of other people who have, demands and requests and things they want done on the site. And so it was really important. We did that before we even started. Knew that the U was going to move to Drupal, really identifying the web point people, what that role is, and then identifying the web. We call it we have a little video about it here inside if you go to z.umn.edu/ahcweb, that's where all this stuff is here. But really defining like our support structure, kind of what is the right web solution, identifying some things that would no longer be in our support, because we're managing for things for defunct projects that like last modified 2006 or and things from some other schools. So really just we want to just switch our whole model to a model of continuous improvement. It had been really just more like shifting from one of these systems to another system, and really wanted to put the focus on what you're trying to do and not falling so far behind. So with this, it was a big leap with moving to a responsive design, moving to the open source Drupal, doing a lot of content cleanup. We didn't do like a migration tool. We had people building out all these pages and determining how to set up the pages to present the content most effectively. And so it was kind of it was a lot of projects into one to kind of get us a baseline.
It plays very nicely with Shibboleth, and are you able to create multi-site research projects using Shibboleth?
Do you mean?
Like so, different universities, staff can log into the site themselves.
We have
Different universities. I'm not sure about that part.
Right.
But you guys do use Shibboleth, right?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
use,
So everyone can use their regular university login to edit.
That was a must, and it took a little bit of work to get that configured. I think to kind of get it to work, but I think we got it to work because I think everybody's got something a little bit different, and so it's kind of. I think there was something out there, but it needed to be kind of massaged a little bit to make it work. I don't know. I don't know as far as having it across, different academic, university thing. I don't know about that. I think it's just
something
different.
like analogous to Eduroam, which is the wireless.
That's the promise of Shibboleth, is that different institutions can have their different federations.
Yeah, well, this I don't think, this is set up for just the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, it's just the
university.
I wanted to make an observation. It looks like you guys had really realistic expectations of like what a CMS can do for you, and you tried to understand its capabilities and to leverage those, and then try to find a way to like not fight the CMS, but to work with what it can do. I think that's really awesome. Like that's important for any technology.
The HC, we were lucky. I think we were in the wild west of websites where your website was as good as your office intern was at the time back in 2000. And early on, we got into a homegrown, cold fusion base. We hired somebody and they built something for us. But the promise was that there was such a disparate quality of sites, and so the Office of Communications, took that on and came up with the CMS. And the promise was that we'll help provide support for your websites and bring some consistency on it. What we're asking for is consistency, and you're going to be operating in the CMS environment. That you're not going to be able to do all of that stuff. People got used to that a long time ago, and so we didn't have to fight those things. I'm aware of other areas within the university where CMS is a real threat. It's gonna take away all my creativity, and I'm gonna have to work in this box, and I'm not gonna be able to do this and that. But we didn't have to. Our areas were kind of, it was already part of the culture, so we didn't have to overcome that. And I don't know, the timelines, I guess we were just always very realistic. I think we would kind of set some deadlines or some markers and try to achieve that, but we didn't beat ourselves up, you know, if we ended up going, you know, beyond it. We were respectful for those things, but we were just trying to be realistic in the whole process, because we wanted a quality product in the end, and that was really all that was important. It was just going to take a little bit of extra time to get us there. It's going to save us a hell of a lot of headaches, you know, later on if we just try to rush through, you know, everything. So I don't know, maybe that's one of the benefits of working at a 160-year-old institution. Things just tend to move a little slower around here, and it's okay.
Right. Yeah, you have to cut yourself a little slack, because I mean the whole university was getting into this new system, and it was a lot of pressure. I mean, if we kind of look back, it was a lot of pressure at the time to get a lot done quickly, because this expectation had been set up. Drupal is ready, like the store is open. What was the analogy?
There were some higher ups in OIT that I don't think really knew and thought that we were going to be able to get out of our system in 6 months.
Right.
And move all 165 sites over in 6 months. And at those meetings, I always just laughed.
Right. So just, you know, being real, and then trying, and then, you know, adjusting as things shift. And so we did a lot of communication with our community, with sort of these monthly web community events and various kind of emails. We kept a schedule, which we would update. So there's still things to be done left on the schedule, but we had, you know, and then would send, when a series of things launched, would send a note out about what has launched. So I think, you know, but just also being, you know, we had to also really set, once we were really hitting up closer to the deadline, just as a team, we did a lot of focus on just how do we get from point A to point B, and we can't make all the, people have a lot of hopes and dreams around their websites.
Yeah,
and, you know, you have to sort of set the scope of what your project is. So, you know, we got to a point where it wasn't trying to fix everything that was wrong. It was really just getting it out of the burning building that was this old content management system.
Yeah, at some point it came along and OIT had to upgrade the underpinnings of the Oracle database system, I think from X2 to X3, and they really didn't want to have to invest any time updating the database within the old content management system. The servers were end of life, anything could happen at that point. We knew that we were kind of on borrowed time. And so there was a kind of this hard deadline, in that we kind of did cut some corners kind of in the end for these last dozen or so sites, you know, just to hurry up and get that stuff done, because, you know, we need to be respectful. OITs need to get those servers out and you know, and have them be done with that. And we didn't want to have a bunch of static, you know, frozen in time sites floating out there. That would make it very difficult. So, you know, for us to update if the needs came up. But that was really kind of the hard deadline that we kind of came. But we were close enough that we could end up making those choices.
We didn't migrate. We built.
Right.
And I was looking at, I logged on the first time 2 years. 2 weeks ago. So, and we launched the first site in December of 2014. So, yeah, 6 months.
Our first experience with
from not having anything in it to launch. So.
Right. With the university system was with the grad school, and they came to us. Yeah, they were one of the pilot. They didn't like the way that Palantir was designing the site, so then we got it. So it took them, I think, 2 years to launch that site. It was an insane amount of time. And it was like through that process we learned, okay, this is not going to work for us the way that the panel system, the way the whole thing is. And that's when we started rethinking our needs, because we need sites that can get launched in 3 months, not 2 years. And so our template that we finally settled on all of our needs, and we can get a site out now in like a week. So it's the whole new process was long. And I think at one point we started feeling like we were Drupal hackers, not developers, because we're constantly going in and having to cancel out CSS from the main base theme in order to get a look that we wanted. And it would, and then, you know, you always run into problems that it's going to break eventually. You're going to end up with problems. So, so we were really, really happy when we got this new system where basically the only thing that we're taking from U of M core is the header and the footer, and everything else is a blank slate, and our template is kind of dropped into the center. So, so we don't have to go back, because the way that it was working, we were canceling out the U of M base, but then the core base styles was coming in and still overriding. So then we're having to, I think we spent 90% of our time just canceling out code, and it was crazy.
Could you talk a little bit about the theme that you, like why you were choosing to make that larger shift away from that core? And then I think I heard you talk about panels versus something else.
Yeah, we're using Bootstrap and blocks instead of panels, the panelizer, so that we can have different layouts on the fly. So we've set up a system where we don't have to change content, like the content types, we don't have to change variants or create variants, and or even have panel layouts, you know, within our styling SAS code. So we were able to set up, the content manager can actually go in and within a page decide whether or not they want that page to be a 3-column, 2-column, 1-column type layout. And they can do it on the fly without that page going rogue. Because if your page goes rogue and then they update, it can break it. And so that was kind of our big dilemma. And our customers, our users wanted very unique sites that were different from just the university with the hero image and a right column menu bar, and they wanted something totally different.
So you were really looking for that customizability to level 10 where...
Right. Whereas we found actually there's a lot of customizability within what the U has to offer, and we've been able to create our own content types, our own layouts, and it's very easy for the contributor to change the layouts on the fly. And our contributors aren't so advanced that like just being able to drag the boxes around using Panelizer is really an awesome. It's so much better than what our old system had, and you can really be flexible. You can create you can create a page, and then one of the things we show in the training is you add some related links, and then you can easily change the layout to put them in the sidebar. We've got a bunch of different call-outs. There's a bunch that's just we've been able to create to meet the needs that have arisen, and we like not being on the hook for a lot of the things that are managed centrally, and being on the hook for the things that are more to do with our content and design, because that's where that's sort of where our strength is, I guess, in our office and our team, to focus on the content strategy and the some of the functionality and things that people need to achieve specific things to do with their subject areas.
And so you're still, all that flexibility still allows for highly structured content on a per page basis. So I mean, I guess my concern with that would be, you're getting back to the kind of design your own adventure and away from the structure that the content types provide. Are you feeling like, you're striking a happy medium with that combination?
I think with the content types and using Panelizer, you can set up the initial stuff with Panelizer, gives you the flexibility, be able to add, the chunks and move things around, and and create columns on the fly, create accordions, create responsive tabs. It gives us the ability to do that. Where I think that's why we try to keep that HC content thing. We try to keep that as flexible as possible, so it can be used in 90% of the pages. It would be the only thing that you would ever need, and that you would have some very specific things. If we have news or event types or things like that we might have something a little more, set up that's a little more views friendly, that we can take advantage of, of some of that stuff. But really folks just want to build web pages. They don't care about all of the other stuff, and having just something that is flexible that can build them a flat web page is really what most people are looking for. They don't necessarily need to have all of that automation and all of that stuff.
So we're at 3:15, so we need to wrap up it. I'll be hanging out here for a few more minutes and the rest of the day here, and there's lots to talk about here. So, what's that? Party.
You're all invited, buddy.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming. There's a lot of lessons learned throughout this multi-year project, so lots to talk about. Thank you.
If it's about